The glint of gold caught Zane Russet's eye as the setting sun cast long shadows over Florissant's dusty Main Street. A woman was on her knees, frantically sifting through the dirt with growing desperation, her honey-blonde hair falling from its careful arrangement as tears threatened to spill down her flushed cheeks. Emma Calloway had arrived in Florissant, Colorado, only 3 days prior, a widow carrying nothing but painful memories and a wedding ring that no longer had a marriage to symbolize. The small gold band had been the last connection to her past life in Boston, and now it was lost somewhere in the unforgiving dust of this frontier town. "Madam," Zane approached slowly, his spurs jangling softly with each step, "you seem to be in some distress." Emma looked up, momentarily startled by the tall figure blocking the sun. His face was partially obscured by the shadow of his hat brim, but she could make out a strong jawline covered with several days' worth of stubble. "I've lost my wedding ring," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "It's all I have left of," she stopped herself, unwilling to share her grief with a stranger. Zane knelt beside her, his weathered hands joining hers in the dirt. "When did you notice it missing?" "Just now. I was adjusting my gloves and it must have slipped off." She looked hopelessly at the expanse of dirt. "It could be anywhere." "Well, we best be thorough then." He removed his hat, revealing sun-streaked brown hair and eyes the color of whiskey. "I'm Zane Russet, town marshal." "Emma Calloway," she replied, noting the star pinned to his vest. "I've only just arrived from Boston." "Boston's a long way from Florissant," he remarked, methodically combing through the dirt. "What brings a city lady out here to the Colorado territory?" Emma hesitated. "A fresh start," Zane nodded, understanding in his eyes. Many came west seeking exactly that. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the mountains, Emma's shoulders slumped in defeat. "It's hopeless. I should accept that it's gone." "Not yet," Zane said, pulling a match from his pocket. He struck it against his boot and lit a small lantern he'd retrieved from a nearby hitching post. The warm glow illuminated a small circle around them. "You needn't trouble yourself further, Marshal," Emma said, though she made no move to leave. "No trouble at all, Mrs. Calloway," he replied, his eyes fixed on the ground. "Miss," she corrected quietly. "He's been gone 3 years now." Zane's eyes flickered to hers momentarily before returning to the search. They worked in companionable silence for nearly an hour, the night growing cooler around them. Just as Emma was about to insist they abandon the search, Zane went completely still. His hand reached out, fingers closing around something in the dirt. Slowly, he raised his closed fist. "Is this what you're looking for?" he asked, opening his palm to reveal the simple gold band. Emma's eyes widened. "Yes," she exclaimed, reaching for it. Her fingers brushed his calloused palm as she took the ring, sending an unexpected tingle up her arm. "Thank you, Marshal Russet. You've no idea what this means to me." In the lantern light, Zane studied her face, the relief in her green eyes, the small smile that softened her features. Something stirred within him, a feeling long dormant. "If you don't mind my saying," he began carefully, "that ring seems to bring you more sorrow than joy." Emma stared at the band, suddenly heavy in her hand. "It's all I have left of my old life." Zane rose to his feet, offering his hand to help her up. When she stood, they were closer than propriety allowed, but neither stepped back immediately. "Perhaps someday," he said softly, his voice rough with an emotion he hadn't expected, "I could give you a new one. A ring that represents beginnings, not endings." The boldness of his statement surprised them both. Emma's breath caught, and for a moment, the years of grief and loneliness seemed to lift from her shoulders. "I barely know you, Marshal," she whispered. "That's the beauty of new beginnings, Miss Calloway," he replied. "They start somewhere." As they stood in the pool of lantern light, surrounded by the darkness of the Colorado night, Emma felt something she hadn't experienced in years possibility. The next morning, Emma awoke to the sounds of Florissant coming to life. Her room above the general store was small but clean, a far cry from her Boston townhouse, but adequate for her needs. She dressed carefully in one of her simpler dresses, acutely aware that her Boston finery would only mark her as an outsider in this frontier town. Her fingers moved to the chain around her neck, where she'd placed her wedding ring after Marshal Russet had found it. His words from the previous night echoed in her mind. A new ring, new beginnings. The very thought made her heart race in a way that both frightened and exhilarated her. Emma had come to Colorado seeking anonymity and escape from the pitying glances of Boston society. After losing her husband Thomas to tuberculosis, followed by her father's financial ruin and subsequent death, she'd found herself alone and nearly destitute. The teaching position in Florissant had seemed providential, a chance to rebuild her life far from painful memories. She hadn't expected to find herself thinking about a man's eyes within days of her arrival. Downstairs, Mr. Perkins, the storekeeper, greeted her warmly. "Morning, Miss Calloway." "Trust you slept well." "I did, thank you," she replied, accepting the cup of coffee he offered. "I thought I might explore the town a bit before meeting with the school board this afternoon." "Fine idea. Florissant ain't Boston, but she's got her charms." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Heard you had quite the adventure last night. Marshal Russet's a good man. Best we've had wearing that star." Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. "News travels quickly here." "Small towns," Perkins shrugged. "Not much happens that everyone don't know by breakfast." After finishing her coffee, Emma stepped outside into the crisp mountain air. Florissant sat at a higher elevation than she was accustomed to, and she found herself slightly breathless as she walked down the main street. The town consisted of one main thoroughfare with various establishments lining both sides: a hotel, saloon, livery stable, blacksmith, and several other businesses she had yet to identify. Children ran past her, laughing and playing, a reminder of her purpose here. The schoolhouse stood at the end of the street, a modest one-room building with a small bell tower. Emma felt a flutter of anticipation. Teaching had always been her passion, though her marriage had cut short her brief career. "Miss Calloway," a familiar voice called from behind her. Emma turned to find Marshal Russet approaching, hat in hand. The morning sunlight revealed details she had missed in the darkness: a small scar near his right temple, laugh lines around his eyes that suggested he was in his mid-30s, perhaps 5 years her senior. "Marshal," she greeted, suddenly conscious of how disheveled she must have appeared during their first meeting. "I must thank you again for your assistance last night." "It was my pleasure," he replied. His eyes dropped to the chain visible at her neck. "I see you found a new way to keep it safe." "Yes, it seemed prudent." She touched the chain self-consciously. "Though I admit I'm still adjusting to the weight of it there instead of on my finger." Zane nodded, understanding in his gaze. "Change takes time." He cleared his throat. "I understand you're to be our new school teacher." "If the school board approves," Emma confirmed. "I meet with them this afternoon." "They'll approve," he said confidently. "We've been without a teacher since Miss Henderson married and moved to Denver last spring. The children have been running wild, much to their parents' dismay." "And do you have children, Marshal?" Emma asked, immediately regretting the personal question. "No, madam, never married." His expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. "My job doesn't lend itself well to family life." "I see." Emma wasn't sure why this information pleased her. "Well, I should continue my exploration of the town. I'd like to be familiar with Florissant before meeting the board." "May I accompany you?" Zane offered. "I have a few minutes before I need to make my rounds, and I'd be happy to serve as your guide." Propriety dictated she should decline walking unaccompanied with a man she barely knew, but Emma found herself nodding. "I would appreciate that, Marshal Zane," he corrected gently. "If you're to be a permanent fixture in Florissant, we should dispense with formalities." "Zane," Emma repeated, the name feeling intimate on her tongue. "Then you must call me Emma." As they walked, Zane pointed out the various establishments and introduced her to townspeople they encountered. Everyone greeted the marshal with evident respect, and Emma with curious interest. "The boarding house there belongs to Mrs. Whittaker," Zane explained, indicating a two-story building with a wide front porch. "She keeps rooms for single men of good character, though there's talk of her retiring soon. Her arthritis troubles her something fierce." "Is that where you reside?" Emma asked. "No, I have a small cabin just outside town. Not much, but it suits me." He pointed toward the mountains. "Built it myself after I took the marshal position 5 years ago." "You're not originally from Florissant." "No, Madam Emma," he corrected himself. "I was born in Texas, drove cattle up the trails for years before deciding I wanted something more permanent." Their tour eventually brought them to a small building with a simple cross on top. "Our church," Zane explained. "Reverend Davis holds services every Sunday. He also serves as the town's doctor in times of need." "A man of both spiritual and physical healing," Emma observed. "Indeed." "You'll meet him at the school board meeting. He's the chairman." As they approached the schoolhouse, Emma paused to take in the building that would soon become her domain. It was in need of fresh paint and minor repairs, but it had good bones. "It's not much," Zane said apologetically, noticing her scrutiny. "It's perfect," Emma replied sincerely. "There's something wonderful about a place dedicated to learning, no matter how humble." Zane studied her face. "You truly love teaching, don't you?" "It's more than a profession to me," Emma admitted. "It's a calling, to help shape young minds, to open doors through knowledge. There's nothing more rewarding. The children here are fortunate then." His voice had softened, and when Emma met his gaze, the intensity there made her breath catch. The church bell rang out, marking the hour. Zane reluctantly broke their connection. "I'm afraid I need to start my rounds. The school board meets at 3 o'clock in the back room of the hotel. I'd wish you luck, but I don't think you'll need it." "Thank you for the tour," Emma said. "And for everything else." Zane placed his hat back on his head with a slight nod. "Until we meet again, Emma." As he walked away, Emma found herself watching the straight set of his shoulders, the confident stride. She pressed her hand against the ring beneath her dress, wondering why, for the first time in 3 years, her thoughts weren't filled with memories of Thomas, but with possibilities of what might lie ahead. The school board meeting proceeded exactly as Zane had predicted. Reverend Davis, a kind-faced man with silver hair, had been impressed with her credentials and teaching experience. The other board members, Mr. Hollister, the banker, and Mrs. Parker, a prominent rancher's wife, had agreed that Emma was precisely what Florissant needed. "School will commence next Monday," Reverend Davis informed her. "We currently have 27 children of school age, ranging from 6 to 16. I hope that won't overwhelm you." "Not at all," Emma assured him. "I've taught larger classes in Boston." "We can't offer much in the way of salary," Mr. Hollister added, "but your room and board at Mr. Perkins' establishment is included, and the townspeople often show their appreciation in other ways: fresh eggs, vegetables from their gardens, that sort of thing." "I'm grateful for the opportunity," Emma said honestly. As they concluded the meeting, Mrs. Parker approached Emma privately. "Miss Calloway, we're having a social gathering this Saturday evening to celebrate the harvest. Nothing fancy, just a potluck dinner and some dancing at our ranch." It would be a fine opportunity for you to meet the families of your students." "That sounds lovely," Emma replied. "I'd be delighted to attend." "Wonderful. Marshal Russet can escort you," Mrs. Parker said with a knowing smile. "He mentioned giving you a tour of the town this morning." Quite gallant of him, he's usually more reserved with newcomers. Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. The marshal was simply being neighborly. "Of course," Mrs. Parker agreed, though her expression suggested she believed otherwise. "Either way, we'll expect you Saturday at sundown." As Emma walked back to the general store, her mind was awhirl with the day's events. In just over a week, she had journeyed from the refined world of Boston to this frontier town, secured employment, and somehow caught the attention of the local lawmen. It was more change than she had experienced in the 3 years since Thomas's death. That evening, she wrote in her journal, attempting to make sense of her tumultuous feelings. "Florissant seems a world away from the life I knew, yet already I feel a connection to this place and its people. The children here deserve a proper education, and I am determined to provide it. As for Marshal Russet, I cannot deny there is something compelling about him. His kindness last night touched me deeply, but I must be cautious. My heart has been dormant for so long. I'm not certain it remembers how to beat properly. Is it disloyal to Thomas to even consider such thoughts? He would want me to be happy, I believe, but the guilt persists nonetheless." She closed the journal and moved to the window, gazing out at the moonlit street. A figure on horseback rode slowly past Zane, making his evening rounds. Emma stepped back, not wanting to be seen watching him, but not before noticing how he looked toward her window, just for a moment. The days leading up to Saturday's social gathering passed quickly as Emma prepared for the start of school. She cleaned the schoolhouse thoroughly, arranged the desks in neat rows, and took inventory of the available supplies. Several mothers brought their children by to meet her, all expressing relief and gratitude that Florissant once again had a teacher. On Saturday morning, Emma was arranging books on the shelves when she heard the schoolhouse door open behind her. Miss Calloway. She turned to find Zane standing in the doorway, hat in hand. The morning light streamed in behind him, giving him an almost ethereal quality. "Marshal Russet," she greeted, stepping down from the chair she'd been standing on. "What brings you here?" "I heard you've been working tirelessly to prepare the school," he said, entering the room and glancing around approvingly. "I thought you might need some assistance. That's very kind, but I believe I have everything under control." "I see that." He ran his finger along a desk top. "Much cleaner than I've ever seen it." Emma smiled. "Children deserve an environment conducive to learning." Zane nodded, then seemed to gather his courage. "I also came to ask if you'd allow me to escort you to the Parkers' gathering this evening. It's a fair distance to their ranch, too far to walk." "I would appreciate that," Emma replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Mrs. Parker mentioned you might offer." "Did she now?" Zane's mouth quirked in a half-smile. "Mrs. Parker fancies herself a matchmaker." The direct acknowledgement of potential romantic intentions between them hung in the air. Emma felt her cheeks warm. "I should warn you, Marshal, that I'm not looking for, nor am I suggesting," he interrupted gently. "Just a neighbor helping a neighbor, nothing more." But his eyes told a different story, one that both frightened and thrilled Emma. "Then I accept your kind offer," she said, breaking the tension. "What time shall I expect you?" "I'll come by Mr. Perkins' store around 5. The days are getting shorter, and I'd prefer we arrive before dark." "I'll be ready." Zane hesitated, as if wanting to say more, but ultimately placed his hat back on his head. "Until this evening, then." After he left, Emma pressed her hands to her flushed cheeks. She was acting like a schoolgirl, not a widow of 3 years and a grown woman of 30. Yet there was something about Zane Russet that made her feel alive again, a sensation both welcome and terrifying. At precisely 5 o'clock, Zane arrived with a wagon rather than his usual horse. He had exchanged his marshal's attire for clean trousers, a white shirt, and a dark vest. His hair was neatly combed, and he had shaved the stubble from his jaw, revealing a strong chin and the faint scar Emma had noticed earlier. "You look lovely," he said simply as he helped her into the wagon. Emma had chosen her best dress for the occasion, a deep blue that complemented her fair coloring. She had debated whether to wear her wedding ring on its chain and ultimately decided to leave it in her drawer. Tonight, at least, she would set the past aside. "Thank you," she replied. "You clean up rather well yourself, Marshal." His smile reached his eyes. "I believe we agreed on Zane, especially when I'm not wearing the badge." The ride to the Parker Ranch took them through rolling hills painted with the golds and reds of early autumn. Aspens quivered in the gentle breeze, their leaves catching the late afternoon sunlight. Emma found the scenery breathtaking. "It's beautiful here," she remarked, "so different from the East." "Does it make you homesick?" Zane asked. Emma considered the question. "Oddly, no. Boston holds too many memories, not all of them pleasant. This feels like a fresh page in a new book." "A chance to write your own story," Zane suggested. "Yes, exactly." They fell into comfortable conversation as the wagon rolled along. Zane told her about his years as a cowboy, driving herds up from Texas to the railheads in Kansas. "It was a hard life," he admitted. "Months on the trail, sleeping under the stars, facing stampedes, river crossings, and the occasional hostile encounter. But there was freedom in it, too." "What made you give it up for a marshal's badge?" Emma asked. Zane's expression grew serious. "I saw too many cow towns descend into lawlessness. Men with too much money after months on the trail, spending it all on whiskey and cards. Violence became commonplace." He paused. During one particularly bad night in Dodge City, a young boy was caught in the crossfire of a gunfight. He didn't survive. Emma's hand instinctively reached for his arm, offering comfort. "I'm sorry. I decided then that I wanted to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. When Florissant advertised for a marshal, I applied, never looked back." "The town is fortunate to have you," Emma said sincerely. Zane's gaze lingered on her face. "I'm beginning to think I'm the fortunate one." The Parker Ranch came into view before Emma could respond, a sprawling property with a large main house, several outbuildings, and a barn where the festivities appeared to be taking place. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the proceedings, and the sounds of fiddle music and laughter drifted toward them. Mrs. Parker greeted them warmly at the entrance to the barn. "Miss Calloway, Marshal Russet, I'm so glad you could join us." She took Emma's hands in hers. "Everyone is eager to meet our new teacher." What followed was a whirlwind of introductions as Emma met nearly every family in Florissant. She did her best to remember names and faces, particularly of the children who would soon be her students. They ranged from shy to boisterous, but all seemed curious about their new teacher. The barn had been cleared of hay and equipment to create a dance floor, with tables of food along one wall. Emma found herself swept into the community's embrace, sharing a plate of delicious home-cooked dishes with Zane, who remained attentively by her side throughout. "You dance, Miss Calloway?" he asked as the fiddle struck up a lively tune. "I do," Emma replied, "though it's been some time." "Perhaps you'll do me the honor." Zane extended his hand, his expression hopeful. Emma hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "I'd be delighted." As Zane led her onto the dance floor, Emma was acutely aware of the eyes following them. Being the center of attention made her uncomfortable, but Zane's steady presence calmed her nerves. "Ignore them," he murmured, seeming to read her thoughts. "They're just curious about the Boston lady who's captured the marshal's attention." "Is that what I've done?" Emma asked, unable to resist the opening. Zane's hand tightened slightly at her waist as he guided her through the steps of the dance. "More than you know," he admitted quietly. The music carried them across the floor, and Emma found herself relaxing into the movement, into Zane's confident lead. It felt right, somehow, to be in his arms, as if she'd found something she hadn't realized she was missing. As the evening progressed, they danced several more times, interspersed with conversations with townspeople. Emma discovered that Zane was well respected in Florissant, not just for keeping the peace, but for his fairness and integrity. "He's the best marshal we've ever had," Mr. Hollister told her as they watched Zane entertaining a group of children with a story. "Before him, we had a fellow who was more interested in the whiskey at the saloon than in keeping order. Zane changed all that. Man has a moral compass that never wavers." It was late when they finally departed, the stars brilliant in the clear mountain sky. Emma was tired but content as Zane helped her into the wagon. "Did you enjoy yourself?" he asked as they started the journey back to town. "Very much," Emma replied. "Everyone was so welcoming. I think I'll be happy here." "I'm glad to hear it." He glanced at her profile in the moonlight. "Florissant needs you. The children need you." Emma turned to meet his gaze. "And what about you, Marshal? What do you need?" The question hung between them, bold and unexpected. Zane drew the wagon to a halt, turning to face her fully. "What I need," he said softly, "is the courage to tell you that I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since the moment I found you searching for your ring. What I need is to know if there's any chance you might someday feel for me what I'm beginning to feel for you." Emma's heart raced. "Zane, you don't need to answer now," he interrupted gently. "I know it's too soon. You're still healing, still finding your place here. I just wanted you to know where I stand." Emma studied his face in the moonlight, the earnest eyes, the strong features that had become increasingly dear to her in such a short time. "I can't make promises," she said honestly, "but I would like to see where this might lead." Relief and joy transformed Zane's expression. Slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away, he leaned forward. His lips met hers in a kiss so gentle it brought tears to Emma's eyes, a kiss that spoke of respect, of promise, of new beginnings. When they parted, Zane brushed a strand of hair from her face with tender fingers. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For giving me hope." The remainder of the journey passed in comfortable silence, both lost in thoughts of possibilities. When they reached the general store, Zane helped Emma down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist. "Good night, Emma," he said. "I'll see you at church tomorrow." Emma nodded. "Good night, Zane, and thank you for a wonderful evening." As she climbed the stairs to her room, Emma touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the gentle pressure of Zane's kiss. For the first time since Thomas's death, she fell asleep with a smile on her face and hope in her heart. The following weeks established a rhythm to Emma's new life in Florissant. School began, and she found herself thoroughly engaged in teaching the varied ages and abilities of her students. Some of the older boys initially tested her authority, but Emma's firm yet kind approach soon won them over. The younger children adored her from the start, and parents regularly stopped by to express their gratitude for her dedication. Zane became a regular visitor to the schoolhouse, sometimes bringing small treats for the children, other times offering to help with repairs or maintenance. His unofficial courtship of Emma progressed slowly but steadily, with Sunday afternoon walks, occasional shared meals, and increasing integration into each other's daily lives. Emma found herself looking forward to his visits, her heart lightening whenever she caught sight of him approaching. Yet alongside her growing feelings came periodic waves of guilt, as if by opening her heart to Zane, she was somehow betraying Thomas's memory. One crisp October afternoon, after the children had been dismissed, Emma remained at her desk grading arithmetic exercises. A shadow fell across her papers and she looked up to find Zane in the doorway. "Hard at work, as usual," he observed with a smile. "These sums won't grade themselves," Emma replied, returning his smile. "What brings you by today?" Zane approached her desk, producing a small package from behind his back. "I have something for you." Emma accepted the package, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. "What's the occasion?" "Do I need one?" he asked, leaning against the edge of her desk. Emma carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a leather-bound book, a collection of poetry by Emily Dickinson. "I noticed you didn't have this one among your books," Zane explained. "The Denver bookseller delivered it yesterday." "You remembered," Emma said, touched by his thoughtfulness. She had mentioned her fondness for Dickinson's work during one of their walks weeks ago. "Thank you, Zane. This is lovely." He watched her trace the embossed cover with reverent fingers. "Emma, I was wondering if you might join me for dinner at my cabin this Sunday. I'm not much of a cook, but I can manage a decent stew." The invitation represented a step forward in their relationship, more private, more personal than their previous encounters. Emma hesitated, not because she didn't want to accept, but because of what it signified. "I understand if it's too forward," Zane added quickly, misinterpreting her hesitation. "No, it's not that," Emma assured him. She took a deep breath. "Zane, there's something I need to talk to you about, something I should have been more honest about from the beginning." Concern crossed his features. "What is it?" Emma's fingers went to the chain she still occasionally wore around her neck. "My husband, Thomas. His death wasn't just a tragedy, it was partly my fault." Zane pulled a chair close to her desk and sat down, giving her his full attention. "I'm listening." Emma gathered her courage. Thomas was a good man, but not a practical one. He had dreams of making his fortune in business, but his ventures often failed. After one particularly bad investment, I suggested he travel west to investigate mining opportunities in Colorado. I thought the mountain air might improve his health. He had always been delicate. But the journey weakened him further, and the tuberculosis that had been dormant flared violently. Tears filled her eyes. "He died in a Denver hospital, Zane. I wasn't even with him at the end. I was still in Boston, waiting for word of his success, planning to join him later, if I had never encouraged him to go." Zane reached across the desk to take her hand. "Emma, you couldn't have known." "I should have," she insisted. "I knew he wasn't strong enough, but I was tired of the financial struggles, tired of watching him fail. Part of me wanted him to go so I wouldn't have to face another disappointment." The admission, never before spoken aloud, seemed to hang in the air between them. "We all have regrets," Zane said gently. "Things we wish we'd done differently, but blaming yourself won't bring him back and it won't honor his memory." "How can I move forward with you when I carry this guilt?" Emma asked, voicing her deepest fear. Zane's grip on her hand tightened. "By accepting that you're human, Emma. By forgiving yourself as Thomas surely would have forgiven you. By recognizing that life is too precious and too short to waste on self-recrimination." His words penetrated the armor of guilt she had constructed around herself. "I want to believe that's possible." "It is," Zane assured her, "and I'll be here to remind you of that every day if you'll let me." Emma looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but compassion and understanding. "I would like to have dinner at your cabin on Sunday," she said softly. Zane's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "I'll come for you after church." As he rose to leave, Emma called after him. "Zane, thank you for listening, for not judging." He paused at the door. We all have stories, Emma, parts of our past that shape us. Sharing them isn't weakness, it's trust, and I'm honored by yours. After he left, Emma opened the book of poetry he had given her, finding a page marked with a pressed wildflower. The poem spoke of hope, the thing with feathers that perches in the soul. She touched the delicate bloom, feeling as though a weight had begun to lift from her heart. Sunday arrived with clear skies and mild temperatures, perfect for an afternoon outing. After church, where Reverend Davis had delivered a sermon on renewal and second chances that seemed particularly apt, Emma changed into a simpler dress for her dinner with Zane. His cabin was situated about a mile outside of town, nestled among a stand of pines with a small stream running nearby. It was larger than Emma had expected, a solid structure of logs with a stone chimney, from which smoke curled invitingly. "It's beautiful," Emma remarked as Zane helped her down from his horse. He had ridden with her seated in front of him, his arms encircling her as he held the reins, a closeness that had both thrilled and comforted her. "Built it myself," he said with quiet pride. "Added on over the years. Come inside." The interior was simple but welcoming, a main room with a fireplace, a table and chairs, comfortable-looking furniture, and bookshelves that surprised Emma with their fullness. "You're a reader," she observed, running her fingers along the spines of volumes ranging from history to philosophy to novels. "My mother was a schoolteacher," Zane explained. "She instilled in me a love of learning that never faded, even during my wilder years on the cattle trails." The revelation added another layer to her understanding of him. "You're full of surprises, Marshal Russet. I hope they are pleasant ones," he replied with a smile. "Make yourself comfortable while I see to our meal." Emma explored the cabin while Zane tended to the stew simmering over the fire. The furnishings were masculine but tasteful, with touches that spoke of permanence rather than the temporary accommodations of a drifter. This was a home, not merely a place to sleep. On a small table near the window, a framed photograph caught her attention, a woman with Zane's eyes, standing beside a stern-faced man in formal attire. "My parents," Zane said, coming to stand beside her. "Taken about a year before they died. Influenza took them both within days of each other." "I'm sorry," Emma said, understanding the loss reflected in his voice. "When was this?" "Almost 10 years ago now. I was already on the cattle trails by then, came home to find them gone and the small farm sold to cover debts." He picked up the photograph, studying it briefly before returning it to its place. "Mother would have liked you." The simple statement touched Emma deeply. "And I think I would have liked her." Their dinner proved far better than Zane had modestly suggested. The stew was hearty and flavorful, accompanied by fresh bread he admitted he had purchased from Mrs. Whittaker. "I have my limits as a cook," he confessed with a laugh. Their conversation flowed easily, ranging from childhood memories to favorite books to their hopes for Florissant's future. As dusk approached, they moved to sit before the fire, the autumn evening bringing a chill to the air. "Thank you for today," Emma said, watching the flames dance, "for sharing your home with me." "I'm glad you came," Zane replied. He hesitated, then reached for her hand. "Emma, I need to be honest with you about something." She turned to face him, concern flickering across her features. "What is it?" "When I said I'd never married, that was true, but there was someone once in Dodge City." His expression grew distant with memory. "Eliza was a singer at one of the saloons, not a working girl," he clarified quickly. "Just a singer with a voice that could break your heart. We were to be married." "What happened?" Emma asked gently. "The same gunfight that killed the boy I told you about. She was performing that night." "A stray bullet." He swallowed hard. "I couldn't save her, couldn't even reach her through the chaos until it was too late." Emma squeezed his hand, her heart aching for his loss. "Is that why you became a marshal? Not just for the boy, but for her?" Zane nodded. "I wanted to make sure nothing like that happened again, not if I could prevent it. But I also ran from the memory, from the guilt of not being able to protect her." "We've both been carrying guilt, haven't we?" Emma observed softly. "Yes," Zane agreed. "Maybe that's why we found each other. Two broken people who understand what it means to lose someone you love." Emma reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the scar near his temple. "Not broken," she corrected. "Just human." Zane turned his head to press a kiss to her palm, then leaned forward to capture her lips with his. Unlike their first kiss, this one held a deeper hunger, a recognition of shared pain and the healing they had begun to find in each other. When they finally parted, breathless, Zane rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you, Emma Calloway," he whispered. "I think I've been falling since the moment I found your ring in the dust." Emma's heart swelled with emotion. "And I with you, Zane Russet. I never expected it, never thought I could feel this way again." "I'm not asking for promises," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Just a chance to see where this leads us." "You have more than a chance," Emma assured him. "You have my heart, tentative and healing as it may be." As the fire crackled and the shadows lengthened around them, they spoke of possibilities of shared dinners and walks, of books read aloud by lamplight, of a future neither had dared to imagine before finding each other in this small frontier town. Winter descended upon Florissant with a suddenness that took Emma by surprise. One day the aspens were aflame with autumn colors. The next, snow blanketed the landscape in pristine white. The schoolhouse, despite Zane's efforts to seal drafts, remained chilly, and Emma found herself teaching arithmetic while children huddled in coats and mittens around the pot-bellied stove. Her relationship with Zane had continued to deepen as the weeks passed. They had established a comfortable routine: Sunday dinners at his cabin, Wednesday evenings reading together in her room above the general store, with Mr. Perkins tactfully present but engrossed in his ledgers downstairs, and Zane's daily visits to the schoolhouse. The townspeople had accepted their courtship with varying degrees of enthusiasm. Most, like Mrs. Parker, seemed delighted to see their Marshal finding happiness. A few, particularly mothers with unmarried daughters, were less thrilled. But Emma's dedication to the children soon won over even the most reluctant. By December, as Christmas approached, Emma found herself fully integrated into Florissant's community. The wedding ring that had once been her most treasured possession now rested in a small box in her drawer, a memory rather than a talisman. "Miss Calloway," young Sarah Jenkins called out one afternoon as the children were bundling up to leave, "are you going to marry Marshal Russet?" The innocent question, posed with a child's directness, caught Emma off guard. The other students immediately fell silent, all eyes turning to their teacher. "That's not an appropriate question, Sarah," Emma replied, trying to maintain her composure. "But Tommy Miller says his ma says you are," Sarah persisted, "and that you'll have to quit teaching because married ladies don't teach." Emma glanced at Tommy, who looked mortified at being mentioned. "Well," she said carefully, "I haven't been asked to marry anyone. And even if I were, whether I continued teaching would be a decision for me, the school board, and my husband to make together." "I think you should marry him," declared 8-year-old Billy Parker. "He smiles a lot more now." Emma couldn't help but laugh at that. "That will be quite enough discussion on this topic. Off you go, it's starting to snow again." As the children filed out, Emma caught sight of Zane standing just outside the door, his expression suggesting he had heard the entire exchange. Heat rose to her cheeks as she busied herself arranging books on her desk. "Quite the inquisition you faced," he remarked, entering the schoolhouse and stamping snow from his boots. "Children have no filter," Emma replied, still not meeting his eyes. Zane approached her desk, his expression serious. "Does it bother you, the town's speculation about us?" Emma finally looked up. "No, not the speculation itself, but I worry about expectations. What if—" She hesitated. "What if we discover we're not suited after all? Is that what you believe?" Zane asked quietly. "No," Emma admitted. "But it's happened before. People rush into things, especially out here where options are limited." Zane took her hands in his. "Emma, I'm not courting you because options are limited. I'm courting you because you're the most remarkable woman I've ever known. Because when I'm with you, I feel whole in a way I haven't since Eliza died, maybe ever." Emma's heart quickened at the intensity in his eyes. "I feel the same," she whispered. "But Zane, what about my teaching?" Sarah was right, married women rarely continue in the profession. "Do you want to continue teaching if we were to marry?" he asked. "Yes," Emma said without hesitation. "I love it. These children need me." "Then we'd find a way to make it work," Zane said simply. "I fell in love with a teacher. Why would I want to change that?" Emma was momentarily speechless, moved by his support. Before she could respond, he continued. "That wasn't a proposal, by the way," he clarified with a smile. "When I ask you to marry me, and I will, Emma, it won't be in response to schoolyard gossip. It will be because the time is right for both of us." Relief and disappointment mingled in Emma's chest. Relief that he wasn't rushing her. Disappointment that she would have to wait longer for what she was increasingly certain she wanted. "I appreciate that," she said softly. "And Zane, when you do ask, my answer won't be influenced by schoolyard gossip either." His smile told her he understood her meaning perfectly. The Christmas season brought a flurry of activity to Florissant. Emma helped her students prepare a pageant for the town, complete with carols and recitations. The schoolhouse was decorated with paper chains and evergreen boughs, and excitement ran high as the holiday approached. On the last day of school before the Christmas break, the children presented Emma with a handmade gift, a patchwork quilt, with squares contributed by each family. Mrs. Parker had organized the project, and the resulting quilt was both beautiful and deeply touching. "So you'll always remember your first class in Florissant," Mrs. Parker explained as Emma brushed away tears. That evening, Zane invited Emma to his cabin for an early Christmas celebration. The snow was falling heavily as they rode out of town, and Emma was glad for the warmth of Zane's arms around her. The cabin glowed with welcome when they arrived, a fire crackling in the hearth and pine boughs draped over the mantel. Zane had clearly gone to considerable effort to make the evening special. "Merry Christmas," he said, helping her remove her snow-dusted coat. "It's beautiful," Emma remarked, taking in the festive touches. "You didn't have to go to so much trouble." "I wanted tonight to be perfect," Zane replied, an undercurrent of nervousness in his voice that Emma had never heard before. After a wonderful meal that Zane admitted had been prepared with substantial help from Mrs. Whittaker, they settled before the fire. Zane reached beneath the small pine tree he had set up in the corner and produced a package wrapped in red paper. "For you," he said, placing it in her hands. Emma carefully unwrapped it to reveal a small wooden box, intricately carved with a pattern of wildflowers. "It's exquisite," she breathed, running her fingers over the detailed work. "Open it," Zane encouraged. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a ring, a simple gold band set with a small but perfect diamond that caught the firelight. Emma's breath caught. "Zane." He took her hands in his eyes never leaving hers. "Emma Calloway, when I found your wedding ring in the dust that evening, I made a bold promise about giving you a new one someday. I didn't know then how deeply I would come to love you, how essential you would become to my life. how much joy you would bring into my world." He drew a deep breath. "I know we both carry scars from the past. Both have ghosts we're still learning to live with. But I want to face the future with you by my side. I want to build a life with you, support your teaching, grow old watching you shape the minds and hearts of Florissant's children." Tears filled Emma's eyes as Zane continued. "I'm asking you to marry me, Emma. Not because the town expects it, not because it's convenient, but because I love you with everything I am, and I want to spend the rest of my days showing you just how much." Emma's heart felt too full for words. The journey from that dusty street where she had lost Thomas's ring to this moment seemed both impossibly long and remarkably short. She had come to Colorado seeking escape and found purpose, had been looking backward and discovered a future. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Zane Russet, I will marry you." Joy transformed his features as he took the ring from its box and slipped it onto her finger, a perfect fit. "I love you, Emma." "And I love you," she replied, leaning forward to seal their commitment with a kiss that promised a lifetime of tomorrows. The wedding took place on a bright January day, with the mountains sparkling under a fresh blanket of snow and the sky an impossible blue. Reverend Davis performed the ceremony in the church, which was filled to capacity with the entire population of Florissant and many from neighboring communities. Emma wore a dress of ivory silk that Mrs. Parker had helped her order from Denver, with her honey blonde hair arranged in an elegant twist, adorned with small white flowers. Zane, resplendent in a new black suit, looked at her as though she were the most precious sight he had ever beheld. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, promises to cherish, support, and remain faithful through whatever life might bring. When Zane slipped the wedding band onto her finger to join her engagement ring, Emma felt a sense of rightness, of completion that brought tears to her eyes. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Davis declared to the beaming congregation. "Marshal Russet, you may kiss your bride." Zane's kiss was tender yet passionate, a promise of all that awaited them. The cheers of the townspeople washed over them, a blessing from the community that had become their family. The celebration afterward was held in the town hall, with tables groaning under the weight of dishes contributed by every household in Florissant. There was dancing and laughter, toasts and well wishes, and an overwhelming sense of joy that carried them through the day. As evening approached, they slipped away to Zane's cabin, now their home, where he carried her across the threshold with reverent care. "Welcome home, Mrs. Russet," he murmured against her hair. "I like the sound of that," Emma replied, her arms around his neck. Later, as they lay entwined before the fire, Zane reached for something on the bedside table, a small box that Emma recognized immediately. "I have something for you," he said, placing it in her hand. Emma opened it to find Thomas's wedding ring, the one Zane had retrieved from the dust on the day they met. "I thought you might want to keep it," Zane explained. "Not to wear, but to remember. He was part of your journey to me, and I honor that." Tears filled Emma's eyes at this final proof of Zane's understanding, his complete acceptance of her past. "Thank you," she whispered, "for this, for everything." "We build our future on the foundations of our past," Zane said softly, drawing her close. "Your Thomas, my Eliza, they helped shape us into the people who found each other. I'm grateful for that, even amid the sorrow." Emma closed the box and set it aside, turning to face her husband, her present, her future. "I never imagined when I came to Florissant that I would find love again, that I would find you. Sometimes the greatest treasures are discovered when we least expect them," Zane replied, his fingers tracing the contours of her face as if memorizing every detail. "Like a gold ring in the dust. Or a heart ready to love again," Emma added, leaning in to kiss him with all the promise of their shared tomorrows. Spring arrived in Florissant with a riot of wildflowers and the renewal of life after winter's dormancy. Emma continued teaching, the school board having decided that Mrs. Russet was still Miss Calloway in the classroom. She and Zane had settled into a rhythm of married life that brought joy to them, both shared meals and responsibilities, quiet evenings of reading aloud or simply talking, and nights of tender passion that deepened their connection. Their cabin had expanded with an addition Zane had been working on secretly before their marriage, a larger bedroom and a small study where Emma could prepare her lessons. The town had grown as well, with new families arriving and businesses expanding. Florissant was transitioning from a frontier outpost to a proper town, with Zane and Emma at the heart of its development. On a warm May afternoon, Emma dismissed her students early, feeling unusually tired. She had been experiencing fatigue for several weeks, but had attributed it to the busy end of the school term. Today, however, the weariness was accompanied by a wave of nausea that sent her hurrying outside for fresh air. Mrs. Parker, who had come to collect her children, immediately noticed Emma's pallor. "Are you unwell, my dear?" she asked with concern. "Just a little tired," Emma assured her. "Nothing to worry about." Mrs. Parker studied her with knowing eyes. "When was your last monthly course, Emma?" The question, though personal, was asked with such motherly concern that Emma didn't take offense. Instead, she felt a sudden jolt of realization as she calculated the weeks. "Oh," she breathed, a hand going to her abdomen. Mrs. Parker smiled. "I thought as much. You're showing all the signs I remember well. Have you told Zane? I hadn't even considered." "I've been so busy with the end of term," Emma replied, still processing the possibility. "You really think I might be with child?" "Yes, I do," Mrs. Parker said confidently. "But you should see Reverend Davis to be certain. He's delivered half the babies in this county." Emma nodded, her mind awhirl with the implications. A baby, Zane's child, growing within her. The thought filled her with a complex mixture of joy, fear, and wonder. That evening, she waited until after dinner to broach the subject with Zane, who had noticed her distraction. "Is everything all right, Emma?" he asked as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold and pink. "You've been quiet tonight." Emma took his hand, placing it gently on her still flat stomach. "Zane, I think, that is, Mrs. Parker believes, we may be expecting a child." Zane's expression transformed from concern to astonishment to pure, unalloyed joy. "A baby," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Our baby." Emma nodded, tears filling her eyes. "I haven't seen Reverend Davis yet to confirm, but I'm late, and the tiredness, the nausea." Zane gathered her into his arms, holding her as if she were made of the most precious porcelain. "Emma," he murmured into her hair. "My Emma, a child, our child." His reaction swept away any lingering doubts or fears she might have harbored. This man, who had found her lost ring and promised her a new one, who had helped her heart heal and learn to love again, would be a wonderful father. Reverend Davis confirmed their hopes the following day. "I'd say you're about 2 months along," he told Emma after examining her. "The baby should arrive around December, a Christmas gift for you both." The news spread quickly through Florissant, met with genuine happiness from a community that had embraced both the marshal and the schoolteacher. Preparations began almost immediately, with Mrs. Parker organizing a sewing circle to create a layette and Zane starting work on a cradle, crafted from the same pine as their cabin. As Emma's body changed with the advancing pregnancy, her love for Zane deepened in ways she hadn't thought possible. His tenderness, his constant attentiveness, his midnight trips to the stream for fresh water when her cravings struck all confirmed what she had known since the day he proposed. She had found a man worthy of her heart, a partner for all seasons. The school board arranged for Mrs. Whitaker's niece, a young woman with teaching experience, to take over Emma's duties after Thanksgiving, with the understanding that Emma would return when she felt ready. The arrangement was ideal, allowing Emma to focus on her health and the impending arrival without worrying about her beloved students. As her due date approached, Emma found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her to this point. The woman who had arrived in Florissant just over a year ago, broken by grief and guilt, searching for a lost ring in the dust, seemed like a different person entirely. "What are you thinking about?" Zane asked one evening as they sat before the fire, his hand resting protectively on her swollen belly where their child kicked vigorously. "About how much has changed," Emma replied. "How much I've changed. How finding you changed everything." Zane smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling in the way she loved. "I think about that too. How different my life would be if I hadn't walked down that street at that exact moment, if you hadn't lost your ring right then." "Do you believe in fate, Zane?" Emma asked, covering his hand with hers. "I believe in providence," he replied thoughtfully. "That sometimes paths cross exactly when they're meant to, that broken hearts can find each other and heal together. Their child chose that moment to deliver a particularly strong kick, making them both laugh." "Someone agrees with you," Emma observed. Zane leaned down to speak directly to her rounded abdomen. "That's right, little one. Your mama and papa were meant to find each other, just as we were meant to have you." The baby arrived on a snowy December night, after a labor that tested Emma's strength and Zane's composure. Reverend Davis and Mrs. Parker attended the birth, providing skilled assistance and calm reassurance through the difficult hours. "One more push, Emma," Reverend Davis encouraged as dawn approached. "Your child is almost here." With a final, exhausting effort, Emma brought their son into the world, a robust, healthy boy with a shock of dark hair and his father's determined chin. His lusty cry filled the cabin as Zane, tears streaming unashamedly down his face, cut the cord as directed and watched in awe as Mrs. Parker cleaned and swaddled the tiny form. "A son," Zane whispered as the baby was placed in Emma's waiting arms. "Emma, we have a son." Emma gazed down at the perfect face, overwhelmed by the fierce love that surged through her. "Hello, Thomas Zachariah Russet," she said softly, looking up to gauge Zane's reaction to the name they had discussed for a boy. Zane's eyes filled with fresh tears as he nodded his approval. "Named for the past that brought us to our future," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "It's perfect. He's perfect." As the new family rested, with little Thomas nursing contentedly at Emma's breast and Zane keeping vigil beside them, Reverend Davis and Mrs. Parker quietly took their leave, knowing their services would be needed again, but not for some hours yet. "I love you," Zane murmured, pressing a kiss to Emma's forehead. "Both of you, more than I ever thought possible." Emma looked up at her husband, the man who had found her wedding ring in the dust and offered her a new one, who had helped her rebuild her life and her heart. "And we love you," she replied. "Our protector, our foundation, our home." Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing Florissant in pristine white, a clean slate, a new page, a fresh beginning. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled warmly, illuminating three faces, one weathered by experience but softened by joy, one tired but radiant with fulfilled hope, and one brand new, carrying all the promise of tomorrow. In the years that followed, the Russet family thrived. Emma returned to teaching the following autumn, with Thomas often accompanying her to school, charming the students and becoming the unofficial mascot of the classroom. Zane continued as Marshal, maintaining peace in a growing Florissant while building a legacy of fairness and integrity. Their family expanded with the arrival of a daughter, Elizabeth Sarah. 2 years after Thomas's birth, a bright-eyed, spirited girl who inherited her mother's honey-blonde hair and her father's unwavering determination. The cabin grew as well, with additional rooms added to accommodate their growing family, and the frequent visits from townspeople who had become like extended family. Emma's wedding ring, the one Zane had placed on her finger that Christmas evening, became a symbol not just of their marriage, but of the life they had created together. A constant reminder of how a chance encounter on a dusty street had changed everything. Sometimes, on quiet evenings when the children were asleep, Emma would take out the small wooden box that held Thomas's ring, showing it to Zane as they reminisced about their beginning, about loss and discovery, about endings that became beginnings, about a marshal who had promised a new ring to a heartbroken woman searching in the dust. "Do you ever wonder," Emma asked on one such evening as they sat on their porch watching the stars emerge, "what would have happened if I hadn't lost that ring that day? If you hadn't been the one to find it?" Zane considered the question, his arm secure around her shoulders. "I think we would have found each other anyway," he said finally. "Maybe not that day or in that way, but somehow. Some things are just meant to be." Emma rested her head against his shoulder, content in the certainty of his love and the life they had built together. "I believe you're right," she agreed. "Some things are simply written in the stars." From inside the cabin came the soft sound of Thomas stirring, followed by Elizabeth's quieter movements. Zane and Emma exchanged a smile, the kind that passes between parents who share the profound joy and responsibility of the lives they've created. "I should check on them," Emma said, though she made no immediate move to rise. "In a minute," Zane replied, tightening his embrace slightly. "Let's just have this moment first." As they sat together, their hearts beating in tandem under the vast Colorado sky, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them here, from a lost ring to a found love, from broken hearts to a complete family. It hadn't always been easy, but it had always been worth it. And in the end, that was the truest measure of love's value, not that it came without cost or challenge, but that it made every struggle worthwhile, every sacrifice meaningful, every moment precious beyond measure. "I love you, Zane Russet," Emma whispered, turning to press a kiss to his jaw. "Today and always." "And I love you, Emma Russet," he replied, his voice deep with emotion, "for finding me when I didn't know I was lost, for giving me a family I never dreamed I could have, for making Florissant truly home." Inside the cabin, Elizabeth began to cry in earnest, prompting a responsive wail from Thomas. The peaceful moment broken, Emma and Zane rose together, hand in hand, to tend to their children moving forward into the future. They continued to build, one day at a time, on the foundation of a love that had begun with a lost ring and a promise of a new beginning.